No laces? No problem. Well, some problems, but less problems than before. What's going on, guys? Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you my review plus on-feet video of the brand new Laceless Adidas X19 Plus Pure Speed that I have here in the Launch 302 Redirect colorway. Retail price on this guy is $275, and of course, it is the flagship laceless speed boot from the Adidas brand. And the replacement for the X18 Plus, which is a boot that I was not a big fan of for reasons that I've explained multiple times on the channel. The base design of the X19 Plus is admittedly very similar, but they have changed up the material of the upper as well as the way that the boot fits in general, which has made for an improved overall experience from a boot that I wasn't a huge fan of to begin with. I'm not saying that it's incredible, but I am saying that it's definitely better than it was before. So if you want to learn more about these, I'm going to go over all the details in today's video, including how they fit and feel on feet. So please stick around if you want to learn more. And if you are interested in a pair for yourself, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen, or you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes. You'll be able to pick them up below their normal $275 retail price. If you guys do end up enjoying this video and perhaps would like to see reviews of the rest of the new X19 lineup, don't forget to support this one with a like. And if you're new here watching for the first time and don't want to miss out on future content from me, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. Included with the boots is the usual drawer style box. Also included with the boots is a string bag that pretty much remains unchanged from the previous generation. It is quite a large string bag, so I will say that, made out of the typical black mesh material with the X and Adidas branding there on the front, and then the stitch down the middle, so you basically have two divided categories within the bag, so the boots don't have to touch each other, and it's got strings. So this gets a string bag rating of 8.14 out of 19 plus 1 minus 2. The boots have improved, the string bag has not. As for the boots themselves, the X19 Plus pretty much maintains the same concept that we saw introduced with the X18 Plus, but it changes up the material and construction of the upper pretty significantly. No longer is the upper made out of skeletal weave, but instead what they're calling X-Lace skin, which I think is kind of a terrible name, but as you can very clearly see, there are cutouts within the liner that basically acts as a reinforcement element for the upper, inspired by the 99-gram Adizero. And if I shine a light inside of the boot, you can actually see all of the cutouts in the internal liner, which is not really that functional, but certainly very cool looking. I don't work for Adidas or anything, but wouldn't it have made more sense to call this X-ray skin? So with the internal liner as kind of your base layer to the upper, on top of that you have what they're calling an engineered warp knit, which is basically the lines of material that do kind of create some form of ridge texturing, not quite to the same extreme as what we saw Nike introduce on the Superfly 5 and Vapor 11, but kind of along those lines. It's a knitted component to the upper that does kind of tie it back into what they did with the skeletal weave upper on the X18 Plus, but it's a lot more minimalist in general and just adds a little bit of texture to what otherwise would have been probably a very thin, possibly overly thin upper. It also does make for some structure as well. So as a whole, this just feels to me less plasticky than what we got from the skeletal weave upper on the X18 Plus, and is a little bit thinner as well. So from a touch perspective, the barefoot feel that you're getting on this boot is actually better, I would say, than what you get on the X19.1 this time around. That is probably the only thing that's better though. Which brings us to the laceless system that is technically different, but ultimately feels very similar to what we had on the X18 Plus. You'll notice that it does maintain kind of that ridge texturing on the surface with a top layer of kind of a thin polyurethane, slightly more structured plasticky material. And then on the underside, it's basically just a stretch mesh with a new pattern versus what we had before. And the amount of tension that you get from this is pretty much on par with the X18 Plus. It still stretches a fair amount and doesn't make the boots too difficult to put on. Once you have them on your feet, however, it does seem like the lockdown has improved. The overall wrap around your foot has improved as well. And that's simply down to the fact that Adidas seems to have kind of reworked the shape of the X19 Plus, slightly decreasing the volume in comparison to the X18 Plus that it replaces. Because of that slightly slimmer profile that they've introduced here, the upper does seem to wrap your foot more tightly, therefore leading to better overall fit and slightly better lockdown. But there's no denying that if you're after the best possible performing speed boot from the X line. The best lockdown, the best fit, and the best overall responsiveness is going to come from the laced version, the X19.1, which is also a little bit less expensive as well. I will say that I prefer the feel of this upper in terms of touch on the ball, but it's really one of those boots that, because of the laceless system that doesn't really have a lot of stretch to it, you kind of just have to have the perfect foot for this particular boot. If your foot shape does not match this boot, you're just not going to have a great experience. If it is a perfect match, you'll probably really enjoy them. But even so, the lockdown is not as good as other speed boots that have a lacing system. Moving to the rear of the boot, they really haven't made any changes at all. It still maintains what they call their claw collar design with this extension piece at the front that I think is a little bit too high and kind of annoying, kind of bunches up when you actually have the boots on. And then the extension piece at the back, which I personally don't mind as much, but I know a lot of people really don't like how this looks or feels. Like I said, it doesn't really bother me. It does feature an external heel counter as part of the speed frame, which we'll talk about more in just a second. And then the heel liner and insole remains completely unchanged. It's still made out of a synthetic suede material with these very large bumps that include these little dots on the surface that are slightly grippy. And I really do like this heel liner. It works well with the laceless system as a whole. And to me, it's one of my personal favorite heel liners on the market right now. The insole is fully removable and pretty much the typical comfort insole from the Adidas brand. It has a nice synthetic suede lining on top, some perforations throughout, and it's made from a single layer of this white foam. Which brings us to the base of the boot, where they haven't changed a single thing. It's still a speed frame sole plate with the one-piece external heel counter included. I really like that aspect of this line in general, reminiscent of what we used to get from the F50 Adizero line, which, by the way, this is kind of the unofficial F50 of today, if you were wondering. They just call it X now. And then the sole plate itself, it's a nice plastic material. It has really good flexibility. Obviously, it makes for a very lightweight feel to the boots as well. And it's one of the best sole plates, if not the best sole plate Adidas currently makes, in my opinion. And then as far as the FGAG stud pattern is concerned, this is also my current favorite from the brand. You get more rounded studs towards the heel, and then kind of these triangular bladed studs towards the tip of the toe. Again, very reminiscent of what we used to see in the F50 Adizero glory days. And I have to say, it's actually a really solid stud pattern. I know it's the same layout that we see across the entire Adidas brand and have seen for basically the last 10 years, but something about this layout just feels a little bit more aggressive to me. When it comes to weight, there is basically no difference in comparison to the X18 Plus that it replaces. In a size 9.5 US, the X19 Plus weighs in at 7 ounces exactly, which is pretty much the exact same weight as the X18 Plus. Very lightweight, what you would expect from a top-end speed boot, so no complaints from me in this category. Now, these are a little different than the other laceless boots from Adidas in that they don't utilize any kind of a knitted upper, so there's not a ton of stretch to the laceless piece here on top, but it still stretches just enough and the opening's pretty big, so getting your foot in and out is honestly not too bad. I like to use both hands, kind of slide my foot in from here, and then just use my rear thumb as kind of a shoehorn and slide it in. From there, you might need to adjust this a little bit around the edges, but other than that, slide them on and you're good to go. On feet, because of the lower volume fit, I definitely feel like the X19 Plus fits better, but it still doesn't have the tightness and lockdown and really responsive one-to-one connection that you expect from a pair of top-end speed boots. That's not to say that it's bad, but it's not as good as its competition or the X19.1 that is more or less the same boot with the lacing system. Those just offer a much more responsive feel in general. Overall though, the upper feels quite good. You can see that it does kind of crease up quite a bit. It still has a little bit more of a plasticky sensation, I would say, than what you get with the mesh base upper on the X19.1. The heel lockdown is okay. There's a little bit of movement as soon as you bend your foot, but that is to be expected with pretty much any laceless boot. And as a whole, it is a big improvement over the model that it replaces. In terms of width, it's got some decent width to it. It's certainly not a narrow fitting boot, but I would say if you have really wide feet, these probably are not going to be a great option for you. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and fit and length is perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair for yourself, I'd recommend going true to size for the best possible fit. So in conclusion, I feel pretty confident in saying that this is definitely the best laceless speed boot on the market right now. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's better than its competition in the speed category, because I really feel like the X19.1 is a better performer as well as a better fitting boot. I think the Nike Mercurial series, whether it's the Vapor or the Superfly, is ultimately a better speed boot as well. But unlike the X18 Plus, which I felt was like a really big downgrade in comparison to other top-end speed boot options, options. This doesn't feel like the gap is quite as big anymore. I definitely don't think that it's the best performing top-end speed boot out there, especially for $275. But if you're into the laceless thing and you like the X line and they fit you well, you're gonna have a good experience with this boot. So it's definitely better, but it's still not without its flaws. Anyways, guys, that's it for my review. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, be sure to support this video with a like. Again, if you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $275 retail price. If you have any questions regarding these boots, as always, feel free to ask them down below in the comments, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.